This tale is called My Ex-Wife and Her Boyfriend Laughed During Our Divorce, until the judge's final ruling wiped the smiles off their faces. Hello everyone. Before diving into today's video, I need your assistance. We've noticed the channel has been losing some momentum, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us out. It's quick, free, and it ensures we can continue providing you with amazing content. Your support means the world to us. Let's keep growing this channel together. Thank you so much. Now let's jump into the video. Hey, Reddit. I'm a 32-year-old man, and I really need to get something off my chest about my divorce. Honestly, it's been bothering me for a long time. For the past 10 years, I've been working as a mechanic, starting right after I finished technical school. I worked at a well-known shop in town. Or, I should say, I used to work there, but I'll get to that in a minute. I've been fixing cars since I was 16, learning from my uncle in his garage. After tech school, I got my certifications and everything. Many people think being a mechanic is just about changing oil, but it's so much more than that now. Cars are practically computers on wheels, and you need to know your stuff. It's honest work that pays the bills, and most importantly, I love it. I met Sarah, not her real name obviously, about 7 years ago when she brought her car in for repairs. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs from the start. She went on and on about how her car was top of the line and required special care. I thought she came off a little pretentious, but when she smiled at me, I completely forgot about it. She worked at a fancy marketing firm downtown, always wearing expensive suits and carrying designer bags that I couldn't even pronounce the names of. I won't lie. At first, I felt pretty lucky that someone like her would even give me a second glance. I was making good money, but I still came home every day with grease under my nails. We started dating, and things were going pretty well initially. She seemed interested in what I did, asking about cars and all that. Sometimes, she'd bring lunch to the shop, and my coworkers would joke about how I'd managed to land such a sophisticated girlfriend. I thought she was different from the usual corporate types who look down on blue-collar workers. Despite our differences, I thought we had something special. She used to tell me how much she admired my work ethic, and how much she loved that I followed my passion. After about 2 years of dating, we got married. We had a fairly decent-sized wedding, which her parents mostly paid for, although I chipped in what I could. At first, her dad seemed okay with me. He's a big-time real estate developer but seemed to respect that I worked with my hands. That's probably why he agreed to co-sign the loan for the house. I bought the house before we got married. I'd been saving for years, living in a tiny apartment, and putting away every extra dollar I made from side jobs. The house wasn't fancy, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a decent yard. But it was in a great neighborhood, and I was proud that I could afford it. Her dad co-signing the loan helped me get a better interest rate, but I made every payment myself, and never missed one. At first, Sarah seemed excited about the house, talking about how we could fix it up and make it our own. But then, she started making little remarks when her coworkers came over. She'd say things like, "We're planning to move to a better neighborhood soon," or, "This is just our starter home." It made me feel like what I'd worked so hard for wasn't good enough. I also quickly noticed that she didn't like telling people what I did for a living. At her office parties, when she'd actually bring me, she introduced me as a small business owner in the automotive industry. Technically, that turned out to be true later. But at the time, it felt like she was embarrassed to simply say I was a mechanic. My sister Jenny saw right through Sarah from the beginning. She'd come by the shop sometimes to have her car checked out and told me once, "I don't trust the way she looks at you, like you're some project she's trying to fix." I brushed it off because, you know, how sisters can be, always thinking no one is good enough for their brother. The first year of marriage was fine, I guess. We settled into our routines. I'd work at the shop from 7 to 6, sometimes later if we had a tough job. Sarah worked 9 to 5, but often stayed late for client meetings or team events. I should have paid more attention to those late nights, but I was busy taking business classes at the community college. I didn't tell her about those because she always made fun of any suggestion I had about improving myself that didn't involve leaving the auto shop. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs, the way she'd wrinkle her nose when I came home with grease stains, how she stopped hanging out in the garage when I was working on my project car, and the constant hints about going back to school for a real career. But you know how hindsight works, right? Things started to fall apart about 2 years into our marriage when Sarah got promoted at her marketing firm. That's when she became completely unbearable. She'd come home talking about fancy client dinners and office events, always mentioning this guy, Mark, who had helped her with her promotion. I remember one specific night. She came home super late, like 11 p.m., wearing a new dress I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she said the office had an emergency client meeting, and she had to go shopping for appropriate clothes. She made me feel like an idiot for even asking. That's also when she started making odd remarks about the house. My father-in-law, remember, the one who co-signed the loan, would come over for dinner, and they'd discuss property values, saying how I was holding Sarah back by not wanting to move to a more upscale neighborhood. Right in front of me, at our dinner table, they'd talk about how his signature on the loan gave him some say in the house. The worst part was how she started treating my job. One time, a rich client brought in his Ferrari for repairs. Most shops in town wouldn't touch it, but I had the certifications for luxury cars. Sarah actually told her friends I was just playing with expensive toys instead of focusing on a real career. Meanwhile, I was making good money fixing luxury cars. But she never bothered to ask about that. I used to laugh it off, but eventually it started bothering me. Then came the work parties. Man, those were tough. There was this one fancy Christmas party at an expensive downtown hotel. I spent good money on a nice suit to fit in with her crowd. The whole night, she kept leaving me alone while she hung out with her coworkers. Her office crowd was a whole different world. Guys in expensive suits talking about their investment portfolios and vacation homes. One guy actually asked me if I knew any reliable mechanics right after Sarah introduced me as her husband. She just laughed it off while I stood there feeling like a total outsider. The distance between us only grew after that party. We used to have dinner together most nights, but now she was working late more and more. When she was home, she seemed distracted, always checking her phone or laptop. I tried suggesting date nights or weekend trips like we used to do, but there was always some work emergency or client meeting. I started noticing that she was texting constantly, always keeping her phone face down or walking out of rooms to take calls. Classic signs, right? But I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. I mean, she was a marketing executive now, so of course she'd have plenty of work calls. The real issues started when her brother got involved. He was always trouble. He brought his car to my shop once and expected me to fix it for free just because we were family. When I told him he'd have to pay like everyone else, he went crying to Sarah about how I was being difficult. She sided with him, saying I should help family out since I was just doing simple car repairs. My father-in-law got worse too. He started showing up at my shop unannounced, asking about my finances and wanting to see paperwork for the house payments. He claimed he was protecting his investment since his name was on the loan, even though I'd never missed a single payment. I was working late most nights, partly to avoid going home to another argument about my lack of ambition, and partly because of these business classes I was taking. Sarah never asked why I was late. She probably thought I was just working on cars. She'd make these snide comments about how I chose Greece over her. The breaking point came during one of her company's summer parties. They rented out a fancy rooftop bar, and Sarah insisted I attend, saying it would make up for the last few office events I hadn't actually missed. She just told people I wasn't there. I walked in and saw her standing there. I walked into the kitchen to find them there. Sarah and Mark, this tall guy in a pricey suit I later found out worked with her. The way they quickly jumped apart when they saw me made it obvious. Well, let's just say I wasn't as clueless as Sarah assumed. I had a feeling something was wrong, but I didn't have solid proof yet. Normally, I'm not the type to snoop, but after that office party, I couldn't ignore what was going on anymore. I started noticing patterns. Every Thursday, she'd stay late at the office, but I'd drive by and her car wouldn't be in the parking lot. Then, the credit card statements started showing up. Charges from restaurants I had never heard of, always for 2 people, always on Thursdays. When I asked about them, she'd get defensive and claim they were for client meetings. Funny how these client meetings always took place at fancy restaurants downtown. One day, while checking the mail, I came across an envelope from a high-end jewelry store, one of those places where everything costs more than my first car. Inside was a receipt for a men's watch. My birthday wasn't even close, and Sarah had never bought me jewelry. She always said it wasn't practical for a mechanic to wear expensive things. When I tried to talk to her about the changes I was noticing, she turned it around on me, accusing me of being insecure and controlling. She started making subtle jabs about how I was becoming obsessive and paranoid. Every time I brought up something that didn't make sense, she'd look at me like I was just a child making up stories. The more I pressed, the further she pulled away, spending more time at the office. It got to the point where I hardly recognized the woman I had married. But the real evidence came from one of her coworkers, Amy. She came into my shop for an oil change, looking surprised to see me. She said something like, "Oh, I thought you guys had already split up." When I asked what she meant, Amy told me everyone at the office knew about Sarah and Mark's special lunches. Apparently, they weren't even hiding it anymore. Amy also told me that Sarah had been saying at work that we were separated and living apart, even though I was still coming home every night, cooking dinner, which Sarah never showed up for, and paying all the bills. I also learned that she had taken off her wedding ring at work, claiming it didn't fit her professional image. It's hard to describe what it's like when your entire life feels like a lie. I knew something was coming, but when everything started to fall into place, it felt like all those memories were tainted. All those late nights I spent waiting, all the times I defended her to my family when they said she was changing, and even the stupid expensive suit I bought for that Christmas party. It all seemed pointless. I had been living in this strange parallel world where I was still trying to save our marriage while she was already telling everyone it was over. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was realizing how much effort she had put into making me look like the fool who couldn't see what was right in front of him. I started collecting evidence, knowing our marriage was already over but determined not to let her walk all over me like she had with everything else. My friend, who's a cop, helped me set up a system to document dates, times, suspicious charges, and screenshots of her location proving she wasn't where she claimed to be. Every new piece of evidence felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But at least now I was the one holding the hammer. They had this whole routine worked out. She'd tell me she was going to weekend marketing conferences, but in reality she was meeting him at a fancy hotel downtown. I found receipts for that too. She'd accidentally used our joint card instead of her personal one, a rookie mistake. What really hit me hard was finding screenshots on her laptop of houses they were looking at together. Big, expensive places in a posh area. In their messages, they were laughing about how they could afford it once they got rid of dead weight, which I was pretty sure was referring to me. One day, my sister Jenny came by the shop and saw how rough I looked. I hadn't been sleeping well. She took one look at all the evidence I had gathered and told me I needed a lawyer fast. She knew a guy who specialized in divorces and had handled cases like mine before. Despite everything going on, I kept attending my business classes and staying late at the shop working on cars. One night, Sarah came home early enough to catch me reviewing some financial documents at the kitchen table. She asked with that condescending smile of hers, "More repair invoices?" I slid my business school assignments under the stack of actual shop paperwork. "Just trying to keep track of everything," I said. "You know how it is with us simple mechanics." She sighed theatrically. "You know, if you just let me handle the books like I suggested. I have an MBA after all." "I wouldn't want to burden you with my little shop's problems," I replied, thinking about the business valuation course I had just aced. "Besides, you've been so busy with all those late meetings. How was the one tonight?" "It was productive," she said, suddenly very interested in her phone. "We're working on something big." "I bet you are," I muttered, organizing my papers. "Well, don't let me keep you from your important executive stuff. I'll stick to what I know best." She gave me that pitying look I had grown to despise and walked away. Let her think I was just the clueless mechanic. She didn't know what I was planning, and honestly, it was better that way. While she was busy looking down on my profession, I was quietly building something bigger. The final straw came when I checked our joint savings account and found it nearly empty. She had transferred nearly everything out, leaving just enough to cover the bills. When I confronted her, she claimed she was investing in her future and didn't even try to hide it. That's when I finally called the lawyer. Meeting with the lawyer was eye-opening. He went through everything I had gathered and said I had a solid case, especially since our state considers infidelity in divorce cases. He also advised me to keep acting normal while he prepared the paperwork. That was probably the hardest part. For 2 weeks, I had to pretend nothing was wrong. Every morning, I'd watch Sarah get ready for work, knowing she was about to meet Mark. She'd come home late, and I'd have to sit through her lies about client meetings. I even had to sit through a dinner with her parents one night, where they spent the entire time talking about how I needed to sign over part of the house to Sarah for security purposes. The lawyer suggested I get proof of her father's demands about the house, so I started recording our conversations, which was legal in my state with one-party consent. I got some pretty interesting stuff, including him jokingly threatening to make my life difficult if I didn't give Sarah what she wanted. Then, one Thursday, everything exploded. Sarah was having one of her usual late meetings. My neighbor from next door called me at the shop and said, "I thought you should know. Sarah just pulled up with some man I've never seen before. They went inside together." I knew exactly who it was. My hands were steady as I drove home. It's strange how calm you can be when you finally have to confront something you've known was coming. I walked in to find them in the kitchen, Sarah and Mark. His hands were on her waist. The look on her face when she saw me standing there is something I'll never forget. "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you, now." Sarah's face went from shock to rage in a second. "This is my house too. You can't just—" "The house that I paid for," I said, keeping my voice calm, which only seemed to infuriate her more. "You have 30 minutes to pack a bag and leave." Mark slipped out while Sarah was screaming at me about her rights. She called her father 20 minutes later. His SUV screeched into our driveway, and her brother Tommy jumped out before it had even stopped. "You can't throw my daughter out!" her father shouted, trying to push past me. Tommy was right behind him, puffing up like he was ready to fight. I held up my phone, already recording. "You're both trespassing," I said. "I've already called the police. They're on their way." "This is my daughter's home. I co-signed the loan. This house is mine!" her father yelled, waving papers in my face, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. "Your daughter's been cheating on me for months," I said loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I have proof of everything. The hotel receipts, the messages. Do you really want to do this here, in front of everyone?" That's when the cops showed up. Guess Sarah's family forgot I had the local PD's number on speed dial after fixing half their fleet. Tommy made one last attempt to get past me but stopped cold when he saw the officers walking up. Funny how fast someone's attitude changes when they realize they're about to be charged with breaking and entering. The next hour was surprisingly quiet. Sarah packed her bags while the police kept an eye on her. Her father and brother stood by their car, looking less confident by the minute. As Sarah walked out, she tried one last time. "You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're doing." I just smiled. "Actually, I know exactly what I'm doing." The next day, my lawyer filed for divorce. Sarah was served the papers at her office. Later, I found out she made a big scene, crying to her co-workers about how cruel I was. Meanwhile, she had been planning to take half of my assets and move in with Mark the entire time. Her lawyer reached out to mine, trying to negotiate before things got too ugly. They offered to let me keep the house if I paid Sarah a huge settlement. It was insane. Sarah's family was convinced I was hiding money somewhere. My lawyer told them to forget it. That weekend was chaotic. Sarah's family started spreading rumors, telling anyone who would listen that I was abusive, trapping her in a bad marriage, and trying to leave her without a home. Some of her friends even posted about me on social media. My sister wanted to fight back, but I told her to let them dig their own hole. Sarah tried coming back to the house to pick up more things, but I had changed the locks. My lawyer told her she would need to go through the proper legal channels. She left me a long voicemail, calling me petty and immature, which was rich coming from someone who had been caught going through my house with her boyfriend. The next few weeks were a circus of paperwork. Their lawyer sent constant demands, acting like Sarah was entitled to everything just because her dad's name was on the house loan. They really thought they had me cornered. They even sent over a detailed list of things they wanted. Half of the house, my savings, my project car, and even my tools, like they were shopping for a bargain. The first court hearing was only a preliminary one, but Sarah and her team acted like they had already won. She showed up with her parents, Mark, and this flashy lawyer who looked like he stepped out of a TV drama. They all sat together, whispering and pointing at me like I was some kind of joke. My lawyer told me to wear my work clothes, not the greasy ones, but my clean shop uniform, with my name and certifications on it. He said it would show that I was a professional, not some lazy guy like they were trying to paint me. Sarah actually laughed when she saw me and loudly told Mark that I couldn't even dress properly for court. When her lawyer started talking about how she had supported my career and helped build the business, I almost lost it. They claimed she had handled the shop's finances, but that was completely false. She had never even looked at my business paperwork. Then they brought up the house. Sarah's dad testified about co-signing the loan because I wasn't financially stable enough to get approved a loan, making it sound like he had done me a favor. My lawyer just sat there, calmly taking notes while they constructed their fake narrative. The real drama started when they mentioned Mark. He tried to say he was just a work friend who had been supporting Sarah through a rough time. Meanwhile, my lawyer had copies of their text messages, hotel receipts, and photos of them together when Sarah claimed to be at work conferences. Sarah's mom stood up and delivered a dramatic speech about how her daughter deserved better than being married to a mechanic. She said I was holding Sarah back from her true potential, and she mentioned the prenup we had been asked to sign, which I had refused, claiming it would have protected everyone. Mark sat there smugly, even showing his salary and bonuses, trying to prove that he could provide a better lifestyle. My lawyer just smiled and added those papers to our evidence stack. They had no idea what was coming. During the break, I overheard Mark and Sarah's brother talking about how they were going to redecorate my house. They were planning on turning my workshop into a home gym. Sarah's dad was already on the phone with a contractor, getting quotes for renovations. The strangest part was when Sarah's lawyer tried to claim she had partial ownership of my tools because she had helped select them for the business. My lawyer asked her to name one specific tool she had helped pick. She couldn't, then tried to cover by saying she meant she supported the overall tool buying process. The judge raised an eyebrow at that one. They also tried to twist my night classes into evidence, claiming I was neglecting the marriage by attending school instead of spending time with Sarah, conveniently leaving out the fact that she was spending those same nights with Mark. At the end of the first day, Sarah's lawyer presented their demands. They wanted the house, claiming her dad's co-signing meant it was partly theirs. They wanted half of my business assets, things they didn't even know about yet. They even wanted my project car, saying that Sarah had endured years of me working on it and deserved compensation. The judge scheduled another court date for the next week. As we were leaving, Sarah's dad tried to corner me in the parking lot, saying we could make all this go away if I just signed over what they wanted. My lawyer got it all on video. The week between court dates was torture. I could barely sleep, knowing everything I had worked for was on the line. The threat from Sarah's dad kept playing over and over in my head, and even though we had it on video, I worried it wouldn't be enough. My lawyer reassured me that we had a solid plan, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's team had something else up their sleeve. Every night, I would go down to my workshop and just sit there, staring at my tools, wondering if this would be the last time I'd see them. My family tried to keep my spirits up, but they could tell I was a mess. What Sarah and her family didn't realize was that their constant PR only made me more determined to see this through to the end. When the second court date arrived, I felt like I was walking into a battle. Sarah's team paraded their witnesses one by one. First, their expert who had magically inflated my shop's value without ever visiting. Then, Mark, telling his story about how difficult it was for Sarah to deal with my blue-collar status. And finally, her dad, trying to rewrite history. The whole time, my lawyer just sat there, taking notes with a knowing smile. They had no idea what was coming. When it was our turn, my lawyer called my first witness, my old boss from the shop. Sarah's side looked confused. They probably thought he was just going to talk about my work ethic. Instead, he pulled out a contract from 6 months ago. It turned out that when he was getting ready to retire, he didn't just hire a manager to replace him. He sold the entire business to me. I had been the owner of the shop for half a year but kept working regular shifts because I loved the actual work. You should have seen their faces. Mark's smug grin vanished instantly. Sarah's dad stopped whispering to her and her lawyer. Sarah went completely pale. My lawyer started presenting evidence. Business classes I had been taking for 2 years to prepare for ownership. A loan I got approved for without any co-signers. And the shop's excellent financial records. The business was doing great. Far better than they had imagined. Those specialty repairs I did on luxury cars? They brought in serious cash. Then my lawyer revealed how much the business was actually worth. All those nights Sarah thought I was just fixing cars, I was building something bigger. The shop had contracts with 3 luxury car dealerships, a fleet maintenance deal with a local company, and was about to open a second location. Sarah jumped up and tried to interrupt, demanding half the business since we were married when I bought it. That's when my lawyer pulled out the purchase agreement, dated 2 weeks before I found out about her affair. The purchase was paid for entirely with my own savings and a business loan in my name only. The judge asked Sarah why, if she was so involved in the business, she never knew about the sale. Her lawyer tried to spin a story about me hiding assets, but it didn't work. We had documentation showing she was with Mark the day I signed the purchase papers. Sarah's dad tried to salvage something by bringing up the house loan again. My lawyer calmly showed that I had already refinanced it and was approved easily because of my business income. Sarah's dad wasn't even a co-signer anymore. He had been removed 2 months ago while they were busy planning how to take everything from me. During the court break, chaos erupted in the hallway. Sarah was screaming at her lawyer for not investigating my finances better. Mark disappeared completely. Guess finding out his girlfriend wasn't going to get rich changed his plans. Sarah's brother was frantically calling someone while their mom tried to calm everyone down. The best part was Sarah's dad. His face was bright red as he yelled at his lawyer for missing the business purchase, saying something about how they should have hired a private investigator. My lawyer caught it all on video. He said it might come in handy if they tried anything else. When we returned to the courtroom, Sarah's whole attitude changed. Suddenly, she was crying and telling the judge how she had always supported my dreams and business goals. She even tried to say she gave up better job opportunities to stay in town and help me succeed. The judge just sat there, unimpressed. Her lawyer tried a new angle, asking for a percentage of the shop's value, claiming that Sarah's emotional support had been crucial to its success. My lawyer responded by playing recordings of Sarah mocking my work, calling me a grease monkey, and telling Mark how embarrassed she was by my job. Then, a random guy in a suit showed up. It turned out Mark had sent his own lawyer. The guy started talking about how Mark had no knowledge of the situation's complexity and wanted to distance himself from any financial discussions. Sarah looked like she had been slapped. Guess her boyfriend wasn't ready to stick around once he realized she wasn't getting any money. The final ruling was beautiful. Sarah got nothing from the business. The judge said she had no claim to something she didn't even know existed. The house was mine, free and clear. Sarah got to keep her car, which was in her name anyway, and a small amount of support for 3 months to help her transition. That was it. Sarah completely lost it. She started crying about how unfair everything was, how she had wasted years with me. The judge actually told her to be quiet, or he'd hold her in contempt. Her mom had to drag her out of the courtroom. The aftermath was crazy. Sarah's dad tried to spread rumors about me in the business community, but it backfired. Other shop owners already knew I had bought the place. We worked together in the local business association, and some of them even sent their luxury car clients my way to rub it in. My shop's reputation actually improved. People loved that the owner still worked on cars himself. We started getting more high-end clients who wanted someone who actually knew what they were doing, not just a businessman who bought a garage. Remember how Mark ran off during the court break? Well, karma caught up with him too. His company had strict policies about workplace relationships. Someone, not me, sent their HR department the court documents showing he was involved with Sarah while she was still married. He got demoted and transferred to a tiny branch office 3 states away. Sarah tried to keep her job, but the whole scandal destroyed her reputation at work. The client she was handling with Mark asked for a different team after the scandal, and she ended up quitting. She tried to sue the company for creating a hostile work environment, but that went nowhere fast. As for my shop, it's thriving. I opened that second location I had planned. I hired some fantastic mechanics who actually appreciate the work. Sarah's dad tried to save face in the business community, telling people he mentored me and tried to take credit for my success. Nobody bought it. Other business owners had seen the court documents where he tried to steal my house. His reputation took a huge hit. The house she wanted so badly, it's finished. I renovated it and added a beautiful new garage that's twice the size of the old one. Sometimes I see her drive by slowly, probably thinking about all the plans she had for the place. Her brother still brings his car to other shops and pays more for worse service. Last month, I got this long email from Sarah. She wrote about how she regretted her choices and never meant to hurt me. She said she realized Mark wasn't who she thought he was, especially after he took that transfer without even telling her. She wanted to know if we could talk about everything. I never responded. My sister Jenny keeps telling me I should write a book about all this, but right now I'm too busy running my shops and doing what I love, working on cars. The best revenge? I still wear my work uniform most days. I could wear suits if I wanted to, but I'm damn proud of who I am and what I do. The mechanics respect me more because I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty alongside them. We just landed another big contract, and I was under a car doing an inspection when the clients came to sign the papers. Some of Sarah's friends who used to mock my job now try to get special treatment at my shop. They act like they never made fun of me for being a mechanic. I just treat them like any other customer. No need for petty revenge when success speaks for itself. Edit. Holy crap, this really blew up. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. For those asking, yes, I'm still single, and no, I'm not looking. I'm too busy enjoying my drama-free life and growing my business.